Hey there, guys. All right, today we are back with some more History Matters. This time, back with another short animated documentary, but this time we've done why France got nuclear weapons. Now, why did Britain build nuclear weapons? Before we dive in, though, make sure you go and check out the links in the description box below. I would love it if you joined the Discord and followed me over at Twitch. Okay, not gonna waste any more time. Let's just go ahead and dive right in and learn the answer to this. I think it's mainly because USA was their best buddy.
We all know how the US, via the Manhattan Project, came to create the world's first nuclear weapons, and how the USSR, via espionage and its own program of reverse engineering,
Nuclear bomba.
managed to build its own bomb 4 years later. But the third nation to create an atomic weapon was Britain, and something not often discussed is the means in which it achieved this. So how did it? How did Britain get hold of nuclear weapons, and why did it feel the need to have them? So Britain was one of the first nations to research the feasibility of nuclear weapons and had its own independent weapons program called the Tube Alloys Program. When the
That's a stupid name, Britain.
United States joined World War II, Britain agreed to give it all of the information it had gathered on developing nuclear weapons. In 1943, both the US and UK agreed to share all knowledge concerning the creation of atomic weapons, and as such you'd naturally assume that Britain would also have access to all of the data and know-how from the Manhattan Project, but fun fact, no. You see, the US government, after it became clear that atomic weapons were feasible, wanted to maintain a monopoly on these for as long as possible. The Brits took this news poorly and saw it as a bit of a betrayal, whereas for the US, it was just politics.
Yeah. I mean, can you blame the United... can you really blame the first country to make nuclear weapons, though? I'm fairly certain every other country in the world would have done the exact same fucking thing no matter what deals they had.
Whilst the two were still allies, there were some concerns that Britain, in order to maintain its crumbling empire, may consider pursuing an independent foreign policy from the US, and adding nuclear weapons to that mix was a no-no. So when the US cut off British access in 1946, Britain was run by Clement Attlee, whom the US government assumed would adopt a semi-pacifist foreign policy, and given the state of Britain's finances, wouldn't pursue the creation of nuclear weapons. But they were wrong. You see, Attlee was a firm
I love that diagram.
when it came to foreign policy, and he knew that if Britain was to maintain any international relevance whatsoever, it needed its own nuclear arsenal. Attlee was also concerned that the US would return to its previous position of isolationism and just leave Europe to it. And so
That is a very fair feeling from the British, because really, up until World War II, the historical president of the United States, the only historical precedent really that they have, that the US has in getting involved in European affairs and worldly affairs, really was World War I. And what did the US do after World War I ended? They fucked right off back to the USA and left people alone. Although they did invade third world countries, like I think Venezuela. I think we invaded after World War I a little bit. Good old US interventionism. But yeah, it's a fair assumption to have.
in 1947, Attlee authorised the creation of a nuclear program at very considerable cost to the country. The project, codenamed High Explosive Research to really throw off anyone looking for a secret nuclear program, was centred in Aldershot. And it only took 5 years to build its first nuclear weapon. And it was done so quickly because British scientists had already worked on the Manhattan Project. And so it was just a case of continuing their research to its logical conclusion. The US also did little to dissuade Britain from building nukes because Britain had a trump card. It controlled most of the world's uranium supply at this point and had agreed to share it with the US. That said, the Americans didn't share much information with the UK during the development of its weapons program. And a lot of this came from the fact that there were numerous incidents of British scientists being Soviet spies, and so obviously the US didn't wish to share any
Oh, that's interesting.
secrets. Originally, Britain had hoped to beat the USSR to the punch, but when the Soviets tested their own weapon in 1949, it was seen as a monumental embarrassment. So, having developed a weapon, the next issue was where it was to be tested. As any map will tell you, Britain is not exactly a spacious place and one which is densely populated. And so, the British government looked to its imperial territories for testing and settled on Australia. Now, you might be wondering why Australia agreed to be nuked, and there are several reasons. The first is that Australia was a colony, and colonies don't generally get opinions on things that affect them. And the second reason is that Britain promised to aid Australia in the creation of civilian nuclear power in return. The first test, Operation Hurricane, was carried out in 1952 and it was a success. By 1955, Britain's nuclear deterrent was fully operational with roughly
It's fully operational.
15 bombs at its disposal. 3 years later, the US allowed for Britain to collaborate on nuclear weapons again, and Britain was firmly established as the world's third nuclear power. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and thank you for watching.
Now this, unlike the previous couple of History Matters videos that we have watched, this was a really good episode. This was, this was full of context, beautifully, expertly woven into answering this question. They covered so much context that necessarily was not needed to answer this question, but is definitely helpful in getting the full picture. Not something that's needed, but it is something that I very much appreciate. It gives so much depth. Really, I just got praised for this episode. This is a massive step up from the previous 2 episodes that we watched. I'm not sure if this is newer than the previous couple episodes that we watched. I'm not sure. I didn't check when they were originally uploaded or whatever. But this was a really well made episode. Only 3 minutes, and the amount of information that they managed to fit in, it's truly amazing. It's really impressive. I love it. But that was Why Did Britain Build Nuclear Weapons? Short animated documentary by History Matters. I hope you guys enjoyed. Remember to hit that like button and subscribe for more. And I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.